Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a real simple headband. I used the muslin on this one because it was the leftover from that other skirt that I made. But anyway, it's very simple. It's just pretty much one seam, you turn it inside out, and then you add a piece of elastic. So here's my piece, and because I don't want to have to tuck my ends in, I am going to turn my ends out and then sew it down like that. So when I turn my fabric inside out, I've already got that fabric tucked in already. So I'm just going to take a pin here and pin it, and then now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so pin it. Oh, I made a mistake on that last video. I told you on the waistband to put right sides together. What I meant was to put wrong sides together so that your right sides are always out on that waistband. This is just the opposite. This one we want right sides together on the inside because we're going to turn this one inside out, whereas on the waistband we did not. Somebody just asked if it's okay if you sew over pins. The answer technically is you shouldn't, because it messes up your feed on your machine, and you can also, a needle can hit that pin and break and go flying. So it's not necessary. I did it that way for years and years, but I try to be nicer to my machine lately, so I don't sew over it. Okay, we're going to use 1-inch strip of elastic. So I want to make sure when I put my seam in that my elastic will still fit in that open area. So I'm going to, instead of making this a 1/4 inch, I'm just going to go over a little to the left so I have a smaller seam. Not much, just maybe 1 or 2 clicks. Okay, so backspace in to get your stitches caught. Okay, so now we're going to sew. Okay, so cut your seams off, your stitches, your threads off. I'll get it right one of these days. Okay, so then cut that off, and now you want to turn it inside out. I bought one of those turning tools at the quilt show, but I'm not sure where it's at right now. So I'm just going to use the regular safety pin method. So put the safety pin in, lock it, and then just turn it inside out. The hardest part is just getting it started. I wish I knew where that turner was. I saw them at Joann's, and they were $4.95. They're a long, skinny piece of metal that's got a little hook on the end of it. And I've already used it on a couple of spaghetti straps, and it works really nice. So I'll try and find it and show you how to use it on maybe one of those tank tops, because that's what I used it for. But I only paid $2.95 at the quilt show, and it was I think $4.95 at Joann's, something like that. So a big markup. Okay, so that is done. Okay, if you have the iron, you might want to go ahead and iron this open, and because what I did is I put the inside seam on the inside of the headband, so you don't see any of the stitches. So if that's what you want to do, you should probably just take this to your iron and iron it flat, so it will. This came out because of the safety pin. Okay, let me see if I can get that fixed. Okay, so since it popped out, I'm just going to poke it back in and get it straight. Okay, close enough. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that elastic and I'm going to put it in one side of this headband, and then I'm going to sew across back and forth so that it will stay in that slot. So let me bring this up and just make a quick seam on that. You want to make sure that you catch your elastic in that seam, otherwise it'll pop right out. You might want to go back and forth a couple times too for security, so it stays. But you know, that's you don't have to, but you might want to. Okay, before I put the other one together, you do a very neat job on that. Okay, before I put the other one in, I'm going to get the doll out, and I'm going to wrap this around her head, so I know exactly how much to put that elastic in. So that's a pretty good fit right there. So I'm going to want to leave maybe only, that doesn't even look like a ½ inch to me. Yep, it's a little over, it's not even a ½ inch. But you're going to want to give yourself some room to stretch so that you could actually get it over her head to get it on. So I said it was about a ½ inch, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in. I'm going to cut some of this off since I don't need all this elastic. And you don't have to, you can just tuck it all in if you want to, but I didn't. I cut off a little bit. So put that in the other side, and you're going to do the same thing now. You're going to sew. So I needed about a ½ inch on there, so that's where I'm going to sew that elastic to be about a ½ inch from the other side. Okay, so let's just go ahead and sew that. I got so much static electricity in the air because of the heat being on in here. Everything is flying away. Okay, so that is Kelsey's new headband. Very simple, and they took what, like a whole 2 minutes. And you can do this for your kids too, to match an outfit. Okay, let's see how it looks. Okay, so that is Kelsey's new headband to go with her dress. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to sew some roses on there. I can only sew, I don't know where you can see on the camera. Let me check the camera, make sure that I'm in the right place. Okay, you're good. Okay, so that was, I got glitter on everything. So there was the new headband, And if I took some of these roses, I could go ahead and, you don't have to do the whole thing across, it's up to you, however you want to do it. But what you're going to do is you're going to make a bunch of roses, and all I did was sew those roses on with a couple stitches. And that's how I came up with that headband on the other one. Okay, so I just kept going all the way around. So one thing I did on here is when I put the roses on, I squashed them all together so they were really tightly put together. And the reason I wanted that is because when it went on the head, it curved, and that spread the roses apart. So let me get the rose patterns I was working on. Okay, so to make the roses, it's the same as the video I made how to make fabric roses. And it's this size rose for this doll's headband is 10 inches by 1.5. And it's the same thing. You're going to cut your fabric, put the wrong sides towards you if you're right-handed, and cut your strip and put your point here. Sew it to this point, and then go to your gathering stitch, and then just keep forcing it to turn, and you're going to come up with this right here. So once you've got that, you're going to cut off your end pieces, and you're going to gather all your stitches, and you're going to gather it as tight as you can. If you're using silk or a silky fabric, it's much easier to work on. Your gathers work. I forgot to cut this off. This was my end that I sewn off the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim that down. I forgot to do that on this one. So trim that down so you got a nice edge. And always pull the same string, and then you'll get a piece of junk that looks like this, and this is going to be your roses. Okay, so I've already gathered one completely, and I forgot to thread a needle. So let me thread a needle real quick. It's a big needle. I'm using quilting thread, hand quilting thread, because it's really strong. And gosh, my husband's coughing too. I hope he's not getting sick. It's cold here. It's been down in the like some people are freezing, so I shouldn't say that, but it's been like in the 40s, and that's cold for Texas. Okay, so tie a double knot because you want it strong. Because nobody's going to see the other side of your headband, you really don't have to be all that neat about it. But because you can even see the stitches on the other side. But you know, that's not a big deal. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to sew this with by hand, because I do not want to have to attach my tulle, the green and the brown tulle, through the hot glue. If I was just going to put this on a barrette or something, I would just glue it, but I'm not. So what I want to do is I want to roll this until I get a very nicely defined center. You see that? Okay. I hope you can see that. When I'm happy with the center, I'll take my needle and I'll just sew a couple stitches through there, just to tack it together. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so now I'm going to keep rolling. Now I've got my gathers completely gathered, as tight as I can. So I'm just going to keep gathering that, and as I go, I'm going to, every once in a while, I'm going to take I used a big needle. I should have used a smaller needle. I'm going to take a few stitches. Don't cut your tail off from the beginning gathering stitch yet, because you might want to add more gathers at the end. which I'm probably going to have to do. Okay, so I'm going to keep rolling. Okay, pretty good. So I hope I'm in the right spot for you to see this. Okay, so put in a couple stitches to hold your stitches in place next to the other ones. Nobody's going to see this, so you don't have to be really particular about it. Okay, so now I'm going to put a couple more gathers in this tail, and the reason is because it came loose when I was okay, so now I'm at the end. Just take your tail and tie a knot in it. I mean, you don't have to do this because you can just cut it off, but sometimes it's just as easy to knot it and then cut it. Okay, so that's the tail, so we're going to just lay the tail down and we're going to sew it in. Okay. Okay, so let's see how we did. Okay, so that is your rose, and I need to secure your rose all the way through. What you could do is just go through the whole thing. And secure it nice and tight. So you know you've got at least a double stitch of threads all the way through the whole rose. Okay, so as far as how you want to finish off the outside of these, I decided for this dress that I wanted it to look like moss. No rhyme or reason to it. It could have just been something completely different. It could have just been something like this, if this is how I wanted the hat to look, the headband to look. It's totally up to you what you want, how you want your headband to look. But it could be something like that, it could be moss, it could be, oh gosh, I don't even know what else I have here. I don't have any other ones here to show you. But I just decided on this green and brown, but I only wanted a touch of brown. I didn't want a whole bunch. So what I did was I decided on I wanted it fluffy too, so I went with 2 layers of green, a layer of brown, and then 2 more layers of green. And all I did was cut little squares out of this tulle, just big enough to go around the you don't have to be neat. Okay, so there's layer 1, layer 2, because all you got to do is go in a circumference, and a brown layer, and now we need another green layer. You can lay your tulle out and be real neat about the whole thing, but I've got bags of this stuff. It came in that, remember when I went to that Austin, I told you I got bags and bags of this tulle. I got just tons and tons of green and brown in one of the grab bags, so if I waste a little bit, I'm not too worried about it. Okay, so let's see, I've got my 2 greens, my brown, and another green. So I'm going to take my rose, and I'm going to go right down the center of this mess and pull the rose tight. I'm going to wrap it, and I'm going to secure this tulle with a few stitches. It doesn't matter, because by the time it gets in that headband, you're not going to see the bottom of this rose. So just secure it. Okay. I sewed it in the wrong spot, didn't I? Okay, no, it's alright. I just need to come over on this side. I did sew it wrong, but it's close enough. Okay. Alright, so once you've got the rose on there, what you're going to do is you're going to leave your tail on, because this is what you can sew on your headband. So then now decide how big of a circumference you want around your flower. I made these pretty small. You can see how small I made these. So I'm just going to go maybe a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the flower all the way around. Okay, and I came up with this. So then I took my scissors. These are easier to cut. And I wanted to make it like a leaf shape. So I just started cutting out little diamonds, little half diamond shapes to cut it. There's no rhyme or reason on these, because all you really want to do is to make it look leafy-like. You don't even have to cut diamonds. You can just do anything. And then so anyway, you get the idea. It's just making a few random cuts on this to put a design in. I tried using pinking shears, and it didn't work very well. So I went back to just doing random cuts. And you don't have to be specific, like I said, because you know, if you see something you don't like when you get it on the headband, you can just trim it right up. So that's basically what it looked like. So like I said, when I put these on the headbands, I just sewed them down, and I tried to get them as close as I could to the other rows, so that when it opened up on the doll's head, the flowers would be pretty close to each other. So you don't have to worry if you get too much of this, because you can always trim it down once you have your headband done. And the same works the other way too. If you feel like you have too much, I mean not enough, you can take your tulle and you can just take random pieces of it in whatever shape you want. In fact, probably no shape is better shape. And then just open your roses up and then sew those in. And you can make them more fluffy or whatever you want to do. So this is just to get that mossy look with these flowers. But you know, it's you can get so many looks with this. It doesn't have to be just the moss look. You can go with any color of tulle. You can do the silver. I mean, it's just limitless what you can do with this. So anyway, that's Kelsey, and that's how to make a headband. Okay, so I'll see you next time. Have a good evening.